Hey there guys, welcome back to yet another non-Half-Blood Prince review. I promise I am almost done with it. I'm just spending a lot of time with it because it's my favorite Harry Potter book and I want to give it the best review I possibly can. But in the meantime, I do have a book review for you guys. It's kind of short, but it's a book I love and I think you'll love it too. So let's talk about it. Because look, I have read a lot of books, obviously, but when I tell you that Ruper Holmes's Murder Your Employer is the best book I've read in at least like a decade, I'm not kidding. I'd appreciate if you stuck around to watch the entirety of the review, but if you get nothing else from this video before you click off, it's that you should buy this book, and if you're an audiobook person, I know that not everyone is, but if you are, you should check that out too, because it is one of the best audiobook experiences I've had in a while. Alright, so I'm sure to some of you I've come off a little bit strong with this book, but I want you to understand something. I review a lot of fantasy fiction on this channel. It's probably the genre I read the most, but it is not my favorite. My absolute favorite are murder mystery crime thrillers. And the issue is that there's just so many bad ones that I kind of refrain from doing a lot of reviews. But when I get an opportunity to review a good one, you know I'm going to talk about it. And when I was looking through the bookstores for books to review, I learned that the premise of this book was about a man trying to murder his horrific boss, failing to do so the first time, then getting enrolled in an assassin school against his will, where they teach him how to carry out the murder effectively in the future. And I just knew off that description that this book was going to be something special. And I actually started this book as an audiobook before I went out and bought a physical copy and found out that it was being narrated by Barney Stinson, Neil Patrick Harris from How I Met Your Mother. And that just like sold me even more on this book. And because I know in the past I have reviewed manga on this channel, I do want to say that it's like when you hear murder school, don't think so much like assassination classroom, think more like Hogwarts, except every course is designed to make the person a better murderer. And I'm at a point where, honestly, if Ruper Holmes isn't on some kind of watch list because of the research he probably had to do in order to write this book, I'll be surprised, because the intricate murder planning we read about in this book is like sickeningly, nearly psychopathically planned out. And from what I remember my criminal justice major days, it might be kind of plausible. And now, understandably, you might be thinking, how could a book like this be anything but creepy? And to that, I have two very simple answers. The first is that the characters in this book are incredibly well-meaning. Like, they're good-ish people, at least two of the three main characters are. And the second is that the humor in this book is just, it is witty, it is lighthearted, it is bright, it is funny, and it just balances the story out so well. This book has very British undertones, so if you're into like the British dry humor, it will especially work for you. So let's talk about these characters that I brought up, since they really do carry the story and have to balance like such a thin tightrope, given that their motives are to literally commit murder. And while there are a ton of great characters like the Dean of the School, the McMaster's Conservatory for the Applied Arts, where the first half of the story takes place, Harbinger Harrow, or like the gym and athletic director, the main trio that we follow are characters by the name of Cliff Iverson, an employee out for revenge for the death of a few loved ones, as well as his touted reputation, at the hands of an employer who was willing to cut corners and cost people's lives in airplanes. Wow, I really can't imagine what might have inspired that, but yeah. There's Cliff. The next character would be Dulcie Moan, a well-known Hollywood actress who is like being tormented and blackmailed by a predatory studio head. And then there's Gemma Linley, a British hospital worker who is being blackmailed by her supervisor. And now, as you can imagine, there is much more to each of these characters than what I've just mentioned above, but if I do tell you more about them, it'll kind of ruin the appeal of the whole story, so I'm not going to do that. What I will say is that if this book suffers from anything, I'd say it suffers from like the reverse Hunger Games movie effect, where I feel like this book could have actually been two separate books, one about the training these characters receive at the McMaster's School for Murder, and the second book about their execution of their thesis, as it's called, or their properly thought out murder plan. But the characters themselves and the intrigue behind their plans, as well as getting to learn more about their motivations in the book, really keeps the momentum strong. This book does not suffer from pacing issues as it could if you weren't so invested in the plans of these characters, particularly Cliff, because he is our like main character of the three. The time at the school itself was particularly enjoyable, and I wanted to see more of the moments that happened in there. For example, there's this like end of the year survival task where you have someone you have to delete, and then you're also the target of someone else. So you have to find a way to delete your target without being deleted yourself. And that was really tense, and it was probably like one of the climaxes of the books. Like I said, this is kind of like two books merged into one. So it's like the climax of the school arc happened there. And that was really cool. And then we have some like falling action until we get to the climax of the murders. But we'll talk about that a little bit later. But those were really cool. There was also this really good like dinner party where something in the dish has been poisoned, and how are you going to detect it? But you have to eat because it's required. You're not allowed to leave until the dinner's over. And so it was really tense, and at the same time, you weren't super underwhelmed because so many of the characters in this book were designed to be caricatures that it was almost laughable when the events happen. And look, I'm not going to lie and say that this book doesn't have a bit of a fall-off upon leaving Murder Hogwarts, but it's not like a huge drop-off. The suspense Holmes builds, particularly in the steps of Cliff's plans, are incredible, and the ending of his own personal story left my jaw, like, on the floor. I was so impressed with how he tied everything together. And after reading so many books where, like, things seem a little bit too contrived, like, I was really impressed with how he pulled off these three prospective murders that we have to go and see unfold. But when you think of this book, when you think of Murder Your Employer, you think of the school. And I think the reason that is because that's just the most alluring part of the story. The most allure is around McMaster's. And the book itself is even written in a way that it presents itself almost as a pseudo textbook for murder courses, as well as a diary, depending on what perspective we're reading. And it was actually me listening to the first few chapters, all of which acts as if it's an introduction to a college textbook, that hooked me on needing to read more. Because, like, from the usage of terms like deletion instead of kills to the implementation of the 4-question method of ethical deletions, the book is set up in a unique way that I couldn't stop myself from finishing it. And I think that Ruper Holmes really put out a masterpiece in the way he was capable of balancing these crazy methodical plans with moments of levity and humor that really set this crime novel apart from any others that I've read. And I learned recently that Holmes is working on a sequel of sorts to this book, which I'm intrigued about how that's going to work, given how this one ended. But I can tell you without a doubt that I'm gonna buy it as soon as it comes out, because from his extremely humorous ability to his tight pace and his ability to craft these really interesting twists that don't feel forced or contrived, Ruper Holmes definitely earned himself a fan in me. And yes, I will acknowledge that this book is not for everyone. If you are someone who wants like a very serious, nose to the grindstone style crime thriller, this book probably won't satisfy your craving. But if you are open to something unique and experienced where like the mystery is not so much the identity of the culprit, but rather the way in which the culprit will commit their murder and their process of how they got there, mixed with these like really cool, I say cool a lot in these reviews, but really light slice of life scenes, especially if you enjoy like the humor and the puns that are in this book, you're gonna have a good time with it. And so if that in any way describes you, I think you'll love Murder Your Employer. And honestly, I've been reading a lot of Agatha Christie lately, and while I will always love that woman's work, it was nice to spend some time with something a little more lighthearted, if I dare to say that about a book regarding the planning of meticulous murders. But for me, Murder Your Employer was a hit. If you decide to pick up this book or the audiobook, which again, I highly recommend, I'd love to hear your thoughts on it in the comment section below, because I went on Goodreads and found out there was actually a lot of split opinion on this book. But, yeah, I'd love to know what you think. Also, if you haven't yet, I'm trying to be better about asking people to subscribe to the channel, so if you could do that, that would be great. And I also wrote a kind of like mini novella. It's only 5 chapters long and shouldn't take you longer than an hour or so to finish. So it would be really awesome if you could check the link out in the description to take you to the first chapter and just tell me what you think. And with that, I really have nothing more to ask any of you, so check out Murder Your Employer, check out my novella, and have a great rest of your day. And please, please, please remember to subscribe. Hey there, guys. Thanks for watching. I know, crazy that I was actually able to publish 2 book reviews before finishing The Half-Blood Prince, but I promise you that book is on the way. The book review is on the way. In the meantime, if you're someone who loves Harry Potter, You might find yourself a fan of the Percy Jackson series, and I just so happen to review the latest entry in that series in the video on screen now. And if you're looking for more thoughts on more crime novels, check out my book review that I did earlier, I think last year, on the Made by Nina prose. But with that, I have nothing left to say to you guys. Have a great rest of your day, and until next time, peace.